Thank you, Russell, for inviting me to this forum. Today's theme, New Path Forward, is so timely as we are in desperate need of new paths forward because the relationship between China and the United States could not be worse. Russell, you asked me to talk about my own experience with US-China relations, about how I played a part in China's opening and share some relevant memories. And finally, to talk about the new TV project in which I am passionately involved. I was born in Guilin, China. My family arrived almost penniless to Hong Kong when I was only 4 years old. I was raised in Hong Kong and was taught in school that Britain was great and China was third world and backward. My parents discouraged us to even speak about politics. In my youth, China was close to the outside world, and almost all the news we received was disastrous. The famines, the abject poverty. As a child, I knew almost nothing about China, making my subsequent relationship with China a big surprise. My opening to China was almost a fluke. Looking back at those moments, it was a miraculous series of events that took me along on one of history's most energetic transformations, the emergence of modern China. Here's how it began. I was producing and personally syndicating a US-based television series for 12 years called Looking East. It was the first series about Asia for Americans. 48 hours before October 1st, 1984, PBS called asking me to host the first TV collaboration between China and the United States. It was a historic first, live broadcast of the parade celebrating 35th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. PBS had just discovered that there was going to be no English language narration to the pictures that were coming through satellite. I crammed everything I could find on China in those 2 days. To make a long story short, it was a huge success. The Chinese was extremely gratified that I helped them succeed in their first joint venture between the two countries. Shortly after, I was invited to Beijing to meet with CCTV, the only TV network in China. At the conclusion of my visit, CCTV presented me with a special request. They asked that I produce another historic broadcast, a series that introduced the world to China. The rationale behind it, they said the Chinese government wants to open China to the outside world. How can we open China? We know nothing about the outside world, and vice versa. This decision to use television to educate the mass public is why my series One World came about on CCTV. I was credited for opening the eyes of at least 300 million viewers every week. It was their first sight and sound to 16 countries. One World was so successful, it resulted in my becoming a media and fashion icon, a household name in China. My hairdo, the Yue-Sai cut, was copied by millions of women, and 2 postage stamps with my face were created by China's Postage Bureau. In spite of countless difficulties, the fact that I could pull the series off was another miracle. A few hours after the first broadcast, I got a letter from a member of the Politburo congratulating me for the success of the broadcast. He said, "May you continue to foster relationship between China and the United States." His words struck me. I was viewed upon a bridge builder in the US-China relations. 6 years later, in 1990, at a private dinner with the vice premier in charge of foreign investments, I was told he was very concerned about the US-China relations, as he noted almost all the American companies were leaving China. He asked if I would be interested in starting a business in China, and if yes, what kind of business? I immediately said yes. Without even thinking through too much, I said I would like to create a cosmetic company. He was shocked and very, very surprised because absolutely no Chinese woman was using cosmetics in those years. I said that I would like to lead the way for American companies to go back to China. The cosmetic brand using my name Yue-Sai quickly became the #1 brand in China, and had a 95 brand recognition. My idea was not so much cosmetics, it's just a tour, but it is the spirit that I wanted to impart to Chinese women. I wanted them to know that they could actually change the way they look if they wished. I said, if you could change the way you looked, you could change the world. I am very sure that this was a very new and very empowering thought for them. But a few things happened with this venture. One, millions of Chinese women began to pay attention to the way they look, and the word fashion came into the vernacular for the first time. Two, by popularizing the use of cosmetics, I was instrumental in opening what was then an almost non-existing cosmetics market. Today, that market is valued in the billions of dollars. Three, most Chinese women's first lipstick was a Yue-Sai lipstick. Forbes magazine reported that I changed the face of China, one lipstick at a time. This year, Yue-Sai Cosmetics celebrates its 30th anniversary. In China, very, very few brands last 30 years. The first day I arrived in China in 1984, I encountered an extremely poor country. It was full of bicycles, run-down houses, a population dressed in grays and blues, a country that was colorless. My friends were making $53 a year, but those of us who have been traveling to China all these years, I'm sure you will agree that the China then had no resemblance to China today, not physically, mentally, or psychologically. I always said that unless I go to China every 6 months, I miss out on a lot of what is happening there because it changes so much so fast. In fact, China changes so fast that we have hardly had time to be astonished. The Chinese saying, a year small change, 3 years big change, has held true all these years. You may have heard in China, a bridge is built in 1 weekend, a hospital built in 10 days. But one of the most fascinating things you may not even have heard is the migration of people. 40 years ago, 80% of the Chinese population were poor farmers, but since then, a whopping 600 million have almost seamlessly moved into cities. This massive migration is something never happened before in the history of the world and has helped to transform China in the most fundamental way. Today, there are almost as many millionaires and billionaires in China as in the United States, but a massive middle class has emerged. In fact, China has almost eradicated extreme poverty amongst its 1.4 billion people. This huge sea change is what makes visiting China and specifically Chinese cities so interesting. But due to COVID and other reasons, very few people have been able to go to China during the last 3 years. That surely is one of the many reasons why there is more and more animosity growing between China and other countries. I live in the United States. In the last couple of years, I have not read one single positive article about China in the Western media. When I ask those who say they don't like China the reason why, they usually admit that they don't know China at all, except from what they read. In the face of this type of ignorance, I have been asking myself, what can I do? Can I use TV again to transport people to China virtually for them to see for themselves? 38 years ago, with my TV series, I helped to open the eyes of 1 billion Chinese to the outside world. I know firsthand the power of TV to educate, enlighten, and entertain by presenting the living reality of a people right in front of their eyes. Going full circle, I believe the best way to explain today's China is to produce a TV series on Chinese cities to capture what is really happening to this fast-evolving country. My plan is to produce 10 TV programs featuring 10 Chinese cities. The viewers will go on a journey to the heart of Chinese cities and sample the day-to-day lives of the Chinese. The viewer meets some very interesting people and learns of the changes that have impacted their lives. It will be a fascinating and revealing study of the social, economic, and cultural changes brought about by the open door policy. With China still the largest, fastest growing economy today, no matter what we do, China will continue to rise. It will surely impact every part of our lives. Dr. Henry Kissinger once said that the most important bilateral relationship in this world today is the relationship between China and the United States. Dr. Kissinger is right. Yes, this relationship is important. This series can remind people that humanity is the same the world over, and that people who live, play, and work in cities are no different, be it Guangzhou, Barcelona, or New York. We have the same dreams and aspirations and challenges. We need to put a human face to the misunderstandings we have and find common ground so we can prosper together. Indeed, we can demonstrate the full potential of television as an instrument of peace and understanding between cultures. The plan is to premiere this series across the world at the end of 2023. I hope you will not only join me, but also help me to achieve this goal. You can contact me via the email address on the screen. Thank you.